Dear friends from different parts of the world who concerned about industrial heritage, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Please may I introduce myself first. I'm江Minqing, currently the Associate Professor and Chair of the Graduate Institute of Architecture and Cultural Heritage in the Taipei National University of the Arts in Taiwan. Our two speakers in this afternoon, Mr. Agrafiotis, we call him Kosti, and Professor Chang Hansho, are bringing us to touch upon the issues concerning transformation of tobacco heritage sites. As the conservation of industrial sites is often interwoven with the development of modern society, memory of labor, and sometimes as imprints of colonialism in the case of Asian industrial heritage. The materiality of the sites in the present can be sites of immateriality, triggering memory recollection, artistic innovation, and various efforts of transformation, responding to issues of the contemporary society. So we really look forward to the insights brought from the two speakers to the theme of this event, the transformation and the discernment of the tobacco industrial heritage sites in contemporary times, through cases in Greece, also in Taiwan. So let's looking forward to the event. Now, I think we have a few seconds of the photo taking then. Okay, thank you. And now our first speaker is Mr. Konstantinos Agrafiotis. We call him Kosti, who is currently international correspondent of the Asian Network of Industrial Heritage. He is an independent researcher as well as an analyst of close cultural currents and art movements and their implementation in the creative industries. Today, Kosti is going to share with us this very update case of a cultural space of the Hellenic Parliament renovated from a former tobacco factory. Let's welcome to his talk on the theme, the restoration of the former public tobacco building in Athens and its inaugural contemporary art exhibition, Portals. And welcome to Kosti.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we start?
Yes, please.
You can use this, yeah. All right. So, distinguished guests, I would like to address today's seminar, which is about the restoration of the former public tobacco factory in Athens and its inaugural exhibition called the Portals. Now, the story begins in the 19th century under the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, to give you a picture, it covered the Balkans Peninsula all the way up to Vienna, and then covered North Africa all the way to Morocco, including the Arabic Peninsula. So we're talking about a massive landmass. And in the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was in decline. Nevertheless, from the 16th century onwards, the tobacco introduction to the empire, although it was banned in the beginning, through the centuries, it became interwoven with the Turkish society, the Ottoman Turkish society. And that included the coffee houses. So in the 19th century, coffee houses and tobacco consumption in the Ottoman Empire became dominant. You can see in the photo, there's an illustration, actually it's not a photo, it's an illustration of the 19th century coffee houses and tobacco consumption in Istanbul. Yeah, but sure, this doesn't move. This doesn't move. Oh, okay. So sorry for the collapse here. Well, in 1883, the existing tobacco factories of the Ottoman Empire were closed down, and Ottoman officials, they decided to create a new company under the name of Régie. Régie in French means privilege, and also it means monopoly in English. So what the Régie company did was a consortium of the Ottoman Bank, the Crédit Anstalt from Germany, and the Bleichroeder Bank. There were groups, German groups, in fact. And the company was founded under the premise that the Ottoman Empire would grant monopoly rights to the domestic tobacco market. So the company began its operations in 1884, and it was the largest foreign investment corporation within the empire. So what happened was that the Régie established factories in the major Ottoman cities and also ports. They were employing at the time approximately 3,000 people, mainly women and children, and they were producing cut tobacco, cigarettes, and snuff. Snuff is tobacco powder for snuffing, as the word suggests. I got another photo here. There's a photo in reality of a coffee house in Istanbul. People are actually smoking not cigarettes, but hubble bubble, and they're drinking their coffee. I'm not sure this doesn't. Now, what happened at the same time was that Régie had the monopoly for tobacco for the domestic markets, but there were also two other major players in this, in the markets. One was the smugglers, and the other one was the export merchants. Now, the smugglers, they were doing a fantastic job because they approached the growers, the tobacco growers, and they were selling tobacco to them, and then they were cutting the cigarettes in the tobacco in workshops, cutting them into cigarettes, and they were selling them in the informal economy. As it says there, an Ottoman official estimated that smugglers sold approximately 12 million kilograms of tobacco in 1888, while the Régie was very far behind of that figure. And the other thing was that the Régie had no monopoly rights over the exports of tobacco leaves. So in the regions that they produced high quality tobacco, that is, the growers, they sold the bulk of the tobacco leaves to export merchants that they were in reality unaffiliated to the Régie. So fast forward in 1905, 88% of the tobacco sold in all major production cities, it went to warehouses of these export merchants. Now, what happened by that time was that in the early 20th century, the dominance of the tobacco merchants in central districts derived also from a massive increase on cigarette production and also consumption in the last 2 decades of the 19th century. The other thing was that we had modern technology at the time, which made cigarette production mechanized. And also we have the advent of mass advertising in the following decades. So this had a massive effect on the Ottoman Empire economy and also society, because major cigarette producers in Europe and also the United States, they began to depend on high quality tobacco leaf imports from the Balkan, Egyptian, and also Anatolian provinces of the Ottoman Empire, which they were using for cigarette blends and also to create brands. Here is an example and a photo of the Régie tobacco in a tin box that they were selling them during the monopoly times. The tin boxes, usually they had approximately 100 cigarettes inside. The box, by the way, is beautiful. And it says there, Constantinople, which is the old name of Istanbul, and the rest is written in French. Les seules cigarettes turques authentiques, which means the only cigarettes, the only Turkish cigarettes that they are authentic. Now we got two other examples here. One is a carton box, the other one is a tin box. And these are cigarette brands from Greek tobacco merchants that they were operating in the United States and also in Egypt. Egypt, by the way, was part of the Ottoman Empire up until 1883, until the British arrived. But nevertheless, Egypt kept a very close relationship with Turkey because they were very near. So on the left, there's a Turkish cigarette called Murat, and it's from the United States, but from a Greek tobacco merchant, because obviously their name. On the right, the Kiryazi frères, they are two brothers that they were operating from Cairo in Egypt, and they were exporting cigarettes left, right, and center, I guess. Also here, we have two other examples. The one which is on the right is Camel cigarettes, but as you can see underneath it sells Turkish and domestic blend cigarettes. This is 100% American company from Reynolds Tobacco. The one on the left is again from Egypt, Egyptian cigarettes from another Greek merchant called Melakrino. And if you look closely at the slide, it gives an address in Shanghai as well. So that gives you an indication of how far they could sell these famous Egyptian or, well, Turkish tobacco cigarettes in reality. It's on the second line somewhere that it shows that here, you see China, Shanghai. So fast forward, following the Greek War of Independence in 1821 at the advent of the Greek modern state, which happened in 1830, tobacco production for domestic and also export markets continued with a plurality of brands. And the tobacco industry in Greece became a dominant industry in reality, which helped the development of the country's social, also economic development for the next, say, more than 100 years. So here we see some examples of Greek cigarette brands in the 1930s up until the 1950s. The one on the left, which called Ela Special, it was majorly geared towards export markets. They were also selling them in Greece as well, but most of it went to export markets. The one which is in the middle and the one which is on the right, they were mainly for domestic consumption. The one which is in the middle, the lady who smokes a cigarette, was the very famous beauty in the 1930s, and she was Miss Greece for 1929 and 30, and she became the face of the cigarette as well, as you can see on the same photo on the upper left side. The one which is on the right, with the Z and the lady with the hat, it's of particular significance to me because my grandfather, who was a lawyer, nothing to do with tobacco himself, he was a legal advisor for this company for more than 20 years. And they were producing massive amounts of cigarettes as well. Now let's move to the public tobacco factory restoration and repurpose in Athens. This is a photo, a bird's eye view, in fact, of the factory. It covers, as you can see, a whole block. So the story of the public tobacco factory in Athens goes hand in hand with the country's socio-political trajectory over the course of the 20th century. The factory was built between 1927 and 1930 by two Greek civic architects, and it was a very good example of the interwar modernist architecture in Europe. It was inaugurated in 1930, and it was the home of numerous tobacco factories, warehouses, and also it had a customs office for direct export. That was because the tobacco industry in Greece at the time was a major factor of the country's development and commerce and also the banking sectors. So in the 90-something years existence of the building served as a prison, a Second World War air raid shelter. It housed, it housed refugees after the Second World War. It was home to the Greek Cabinet Office, the Ministry of Finance, and its present occupant is the Hellenic Parliament, the Greek Parliament in reality. The building was declared a historic monument by the Ministry of Culture in 1989 and currently forms a landmark of the capital's architectural heritage. Renovations on the building, they started in 2000, but efforts were slowed down due to the financial crisis in 2009, but they resumed renovation work in 2013 when the Neon Foundation pledged nearly 2 million euros. So they continue with the renovation until it was completed 2 years ago. So the tobacco factory story begins with tobacco, but ends with world-class contemporary art, as the building has demonstrated a remarkable resilience in successive transformations in its history. Now you got another bird's eye view of the restored building. As you can see, it covers a huge block, and that's in the city center. Now, the restoration project, here we need a video. What do you think? Okay, are we good?
Βρισκόμαστε στον χώρο του πρώην καπνεργασίου, ενός ιστορικού κτηρίου, το οποίο χτίστηκε το 1930 και μέχρι τώρα έχει διανύσει μια μεγάλη ιστορία. Σαν καπνεργοστάσιο παραγωγής καπνού στην αρχή, στη συνέχεια πέρασε από διάφορες φάσεις και στον πόλεμο φιλοξήνησε πρόσφυγες και έφτασε το 2000 να αποδοθεί στην Βουλή των Ελλήνων.
Ξεκινώντας από το σκοπό της παρουσίασης μιας περιοδικής έκθεσης σύγχρονης τέχνης, είμαστε περήφανοι που συμβάλλουμε στη δημιουργία ενός πλήρως εξοπλισμένου εκθεσιακού χώρου στο κέντρο της πόλης, ανοιχτού, φιλικού και προσβάσιμου σε όλους τους επισκέπτες. Καθοριστικό στοιχείο στην προσπάθειά μας ήταν ο σεβασμός στη διαδρομή του σημαντικού αυτού ιστορικά και αρχιτεκτονικά κτηρίου, αποτύπωμα της εγχώριας βιομηχανικής κληρονομιάς και της ανάπτυξης πρωτεύουσας. Ειδικότερο αντικείμενο εργασίας αποτέλεσε η συνέχιση και ολοκλήρωση της επισκευής των χώρων του κτηρίου με στόχο τη λειτουργική τους επανεκκίνηση. Αναπτύχθηκε συνολικά ο εκθεσιακός εξοπλισμός με εγκατάσταση νέων συστημάτων φωτισμού, τοποθέτηση επίπλων και δημιουργία νέων χώρων καθιστικού για το κοινό. Πραγματοποιήθηκαν τοπικές επισκευές τοιχοποιών και πλήρεις βαφές και ολοκλήρωση του βιομηχανικού δαπέδου σε όλους τους χώρους. Πραγματοποιήθηκε η λειτουργική αποκατάσταση των χώρων υγιεινής και δημιουργήθηκε νέος χώρος υγιεινής για ΑΜΕΑ.
Σε αυτό το πλαίσιο συνεργαστήκαμε πάρα πολύ στενά με τους ανθρώπους του Νέου, με τη διευθύντριά του, με τους μηχανικούς. Έγιναν εργασίες γύρω στο 1/3 της έκτασης του κτηρίου. Όλος αυτός ο εξοπλισμός και όλη αυτή η υποδομή θα παραμένει στο κτίριο σαν παρακαταθήκη. Μετά το πέρας της έκτασης αυτής, η Βουλή θα έχει τη δυνατότητα να χρησιμοποιήσει αυτούς τους χώρους για ανάλογα πολιτιστικά εκπαιδευτικά δρόμενα και θα αποδοθεί βέβαια και στον κόσμο της περιοχής σαν ένα πολιτιστικό κέντρο της Βουλής.
Okay, this is a small, short video of the tobacco factory. So now I'm going to talk about the inaugural exhibition called Portals and its cultural significance to the building's industrial heritage. Last year, 2021, marked the 200 years since the start of the Greek War of Independence from the Ottoman Empire and the birth of the modern Greek state. In Portals, which was the title of the exhibition, parallels were drawn between this significant moment in Greece's history and the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues, unfortunately, to plague us all. So the ambitious restoration project opens a new chapter in the building's history, as well as exemplifies to Neon's commitment to reinvigorating the country's cultural heritage. The Portals exhibition is co-curated by the curator of the Pritzker Museum of Contemporary Art of Chicago and the chief curator of Neon, which is the Arts Foundation. The two co-curators have taken advantage of all renovated areas of the industrial space, so they have located the exhibits with a fairly distance between each other, so visitors, they don't really feel overwhelmed by the exhibits. So the renovated space has been handed over to the Hellenic Parliament as a new cultural hub following the end of the exhibition, which was in December, the 31st of December, 2021. So from this month onwards, the building itself is part of the Greek Parliament, which the Parliament uses as its library and also as a printing office for the government gazette. I got some photos here from the fully restored dome and the main atrium of the building. An exhibition hall where you can see in front is an exhibit by Gianni Kounelis, who was, a Greek contemporary art sculptor and painter. And this is another exhibition hall, which is about the violence of Kurdish people with the television screens in front. And the last bit that I want to talk is, although it has nothing to do with industrial heritage in reality, but it's about the exhibition itself, because I believe that it concerns us all. So the Portals exhibition and its meaning for humanity amidst the pandemic. The exhibition brings together 59 artists from 27 countries, including 15 new commissioned art pieces by the Neonate Foundation. Participating artists' diverse cultural backgrounds offer a plurality of ideas, emphasizing their shared aspiration to create a portal into a new, more equitable, humane, pluralistic, and inclusive reality, and may I add, society as well. The concept of the new normal, which lies at the heart of portals, was outlined by an Indian author in her 2020 Financial Times essay, which was titled "The Pandemic is a Portal." The article itself, it became the source of inspiration for the exhibition itself. So, quoting Roy from the Financial Times article, it says there that the pandemic is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging our carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world, considering that the risk created by the pandemic on an individual and collective level, it opens a portal. And it's up to us to deal with our transition through it. This is a quote from Roy herself. And the last bit is just 2 minutes about the Neonate Foundation. Neon was founded in 2013 by the art collector Daskalopoulos, who is an industrialist, and it's a non-profit foundation. The aim is to bring contemporary art closer to the public. And the other important thing of Neon is that they go around Athens and other big cities in Greece, and they look for various spaces, including abandoned buildings that they refurbish. Some of them actually they are restored, like the parliament, like the tobacco factory, that is. And they organize exhibitions that allow visitors to experience the exhibitions and the buildings from a fresh optical angle. Neon's latest and most ambitious project has been the public tobacco factory, as I have shown, which they collaborated and also they funded with the Hellenic Parliament. I think that will be all for today. Thank you very much for your attention. And that's all from me now. Yes?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kosti.
There's also, there's also a video that we can show from the Neon Foundation there. It's very short, just 4 minutes, if you care to watch it.
Το Neon φιλοδοξεί να αναδείξει τις πιο ανήσυχες και δημιουργικές δυνάμεις της κοινωνίας μας. Φιλοδοξεί να αποτελέσει ένα ζωντανό οργανισμό παραγωγής ιδεών και έργων και να δώσει ευκαιρίες επαφής με τις ιδέες της σύγχρονης τέχνης σε όλους.
Νομίζω ότι με τον νεοσύστατο οργανισμό Neon και προσωπικά με τον Δημήτρη Δασκαλόπουλο, που διαθέτει μια από τις σημαντικότερες συλλογές διεθνώς, βρήκαμε τους τρόπους και νομίζω ότι στην πορεία αυτό θα δώσει και τους καρπούς του, να στηρίξουμε και να δούμε νέους τρόπους που μπορεί να στηριχθεί αυτό και μάλιστα σε μια κρίσιμη στιγμή για την χώρα μας.
To me, cultural institutions are a place of reflection, they're a place of intellectual inquiry, and they're a place of immense pleasure. I think in the face of the perhaps anxieties about global economies and environmental degradation, the cultural institution is a space where we can have a confrontation with the aesthetic and with the philosophies that underwrite the making of art.
Greece is in a very perilous and extremely painful moment, but I think we all have tremendous hope for its recovery and its advancement. It's not historically without precedent that at a moment of great crisis, important cultural innovations can happen and advance also.
Σχεδιάζουμε μια στρατηγική για την Αθήνα, η οποία θέλει να αναδείξει την πόλη μας ως σημείο αναφοράς και κέντρο παραγωγής του σύγχρονου πολιτισμού.
I think that the initiative of Neon of bringing art in open place, in such a place, is a true gift. And what I love in contemporary art today in gardens, it's free. It's free as we wish to be in some ways.
What is interesting about Neon is, of course, that on one hand it's driven by a very strong-minded individual who has brought a very strong team of people together around him. It's interesting that it emerges in a moment which many would describe as extremely challenging, but very often very exciting things and very interesting initiatives happen under those circumstances. So to set this up in Greece at this particular moment in time could potentially be really interesting, not least because it is very well resourced.
Εγώ μέσα από την τέχνη συμμετέχω πληρέστερα στο σύγχρονο γίγνεσθε, στον προβληματισμό αυτών που δημιουργεί την εξέλιξη και την πρόοδο.
Θα ήθελα και ο ρόλος της τέχνης να είναι να αμφισβητεί συνέχεια τα δεδομένα και την οργάνωσή μας και το σύστημά μας, έτσι ώστε να μπορούμε να εμπλουτίζουμε τον τρόπο με τον οποίο αυτοοργανωνόμαστε πιο δημιουργικά. Με ενδιαφέρει πάντα όταν η τέχνη μας συνεισφέρει στο να ευθυγραμμιζόμαστε σε σχέση με την ουσία της ύπαρξής μας. Μας υπενθυμίζει δηλαδή το ουσιαστικό.
I think the role of cultural institutions in the world we live in is really that of a connector. I think in a multicultural environment, international culture is what everybody is really fascinated by.
Art, because it's art, has an impact to society, to each other. And me, as an artist, what I try to do in my work is to get in contact with, not with society, but with what I call the other.
Η σχέση μου με την τέχνη είναι βιωματική, είναι σχέση ζωής. Η εφευρετικότητα και η δημιουργικότητα που απαιτώ από τον εαυτό μου σε κάθε μου δραστηριότητα ενισχύεται από την ενασχόλησή μου με την τέχνη και τα καλλιτεχνικά δρώματα. Και αυτό νομίζω ότι μπορεί να γίνει κτήμα ή κατάκτηση του καθενός.
It is one of my ambition to do a work of art for what I call a non-exclusive audience. What is this? A non-exclusive audience is something who includes everybody, but everybody means not the mass. Everybody means the who is not interested in art, the who has not love to art, the who perhaps is only a passerby or as accident is in touch to art. I want to include what I call the non-exclusive, because I don't make also a distinction then between the passerby or the neighbor or my next and the art lover, the art collector.
Αν μου λέγατε να συνοψίσω τι είναι αυτό που θέλουμε να δώσουμε, είναι εμπειρίες τέχνης, ανοιχτές και ελεύθερες σε όλους. Αυτή η ελευθερία της πρόσβασης, δηλαδή η ισότητα όλων μας απέναντι στην τέχνη, είναι πολύ σημαντική υπόθεση για εμάς.
What I think that Neon is able to do is to create an international dialogue so that there is a conversation amongst people who are really working in the realm of ideas. What is the most exciting art being made today? How do we present it? What is its educational potential? How do we reach audiences? So I think we have much to learn from our colleagues in Greece, and Neon is enabling that crucial dialogue. I think we're going to see some amazing things emerging from that in the form of exhibitions, publications, and new arts initiatives.
I think what we can predict is that a well-run private organization such as this one will be catalytic. One of the challenges of being in a not-for-profit organization is recognizing that its timetable for success is very different than a political or a financial one. So to some degree, what we're doing is investing in people who will overturn what we believe in 20 years from now. And that's really the central goal of contemporary art. Change, digesting change, reconsidering change, and promoting change.
Γιατί η πεποίθησή μου είναι ότι μόνο αν παράγουμε πάλι τέχνη, σκέψη, πολιτισμό, θα μπορέσουμε να βγούμε από τη σημερινή κρίση, την οποία μας βολεύει να βαφτίζουμε οικονομική, ενώ είναι κατά βάση πολιτισμική.
Well, this is this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your very rich and informative presentation. And with the sharing of Kosti, I think he gave very extensive temporal and geographical trajectories, and that bring us from the Ottoman Empire to the now, I think, under a very challenging situation. So we are able to see the transformation of the industry and also the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we are turning to our second speaker, Professor Hansho. Hansho is currently Assistant Professor of the Department of Cultural Vocation Development, National Taipei University of Technology in Taiwan. Her research lies in heritage-related issues, especially how heritage relates to memory, historical interpretation, museum, and community engagement. Since 2011, Hansho has been working on collecting story, memory, and archives related to tobacco history in Taiwan. Her current research examined the meaning and the value transformation of tobacco heritage. And she published numerous academic articles and book chapters on international tobacco heritage practice. So now we look forward to her talk on the theme, the regeneration of tobacco industrial heritage in Taiwan. Welcome to Hansho.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share my slides. Can you all see my slide?
No, I can't.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Let me try it again. So Yixing, are you going to share my slide or I do it from my side? Oh, okay. So please, thank you.
Okay, now we can see them.
Oh, okay, thank you. So shall I start?
Go on.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, next page, please. So my presentation, I'm going to talk a bit about tobacco history in Taiwan first, and then the second part will be looking at a different case study of tobacco industrial heritage in Taiwan. Okay, so next, please. The historical development of tobacco industry in Taiwan. So mainly nowadays we call the tobacco industry in Taiwan is the tobacco plant, which refers to the yellow type tobacco. So this species is introduced by the Japanese people during the Japanese colonial period. But actually before the 1895, we cultivate different kinds of species in Taiwan, so includes the Turkish species as well. And indigenous people, they did cultivate the indigenous species as well. And different kinds of species only have small scale cultivation in Taiwan during that time. Also, during the Japanese period, Japanese people introduced the yellow type tobacco into the immigrant village. The reason why they introduced the yellow type into the Taiwan is that because during that time they set up the immigrant village in Taiwan, which means that the Japanese people moved to Taiwan and live in those immigrant village. Basically, at the very beginning was in eastern side of Taiwan in Hualien County. And during that time, their living condition is not very good. It's a very poor condition. So their life was very hard. So Japanese authority just went to the US and to do some kind of research and investigation. They just found probably they can try to grow tobacco in immigrant village will make their life better. So they just try to cultivate it. And after that, they just found the harvest is quite good. So the Japanese people start to thinking about we should cultivate more yellow type tobacco in Taiwan and extend from the first village, the cultivation area from the first immigrant village to the second and finally to the third. And also finally from the eastern Taiwan to the whole around Taiwan, we all did yellow type tobacco cultivation all around Taiwan. This is from the history perspective. And from economic perspective is that the Japanese authority in Taiwan also include the tobacco cultivation, the tobacco business into the state monopoly in 1905, which is a year after the Japan who set up the monopoly policy in the Japan itself in 1904. And after the Second World War, the monopoly policy was continued because the tobacco, the monopoly income is a very good support for the authorities in Taiwan. I mean, for the national finance, especially the tobacco. So that's why after the Second World War, the new regime came to Taiwan. They continue the monopoly policy, and also they encourage people to involve into a tobacco cultivation. So the tobacco cultivation have a huge extension, and then on the other hand, they also encourage the normal people to smoking, because if we smoking much more, then we buy more and more cigarettes, then the state can earn more and more income to support the national economy. Yeah. And however, currently nowadays we understand that smoking is so dangerous, it's harmful to the human body. So nowadays we promote anti-smoking. And this is a reason why the tobacco industry declined in Taiwan. And the other reason is that Taiwan is keen to make the international connection. So in 2002, we joined the GATT, and then after that, we joined the WTO. So which means that we need to open the market to the whole world, so which means that monopoly need to be ended. So our monopoly bureau has been finished and then reorganized as a company. The tobacco industry, the tobacco industry declined, the cultivation area was reduced. So finally, the whole cultivation ended in 2017. So officially nowadays, our government, I mean the authorities in Taiwan, they don't buy the tobacco leaves from the tobacco farmers anymore. Okay. Yes, next please. This is some photo to show that the Japanese people cultivate the yellow type tobacco in Japanese period. So these are all the photos taken from the immigrant village. So you can see the Japanese people cultivate tobacco, and the tall building at the back was the tobacco burns, which is used for curing tobacco leaves. And the photo at the bottom left, that one is the process that when the tobacco farmer trade their tobacco leaves with the Monopoly Bureau. Next, please. And because tobacco industry in Taiwan was kind of monopoly, so this is a structure to show how the government supports the monopoly related to the tobacco industry. So at the top is the Monopoly Bureau. And after that, we have three sectors. The first one is the tobacco redry factory. And the middle one was the cigarette factory. And the other one is the Tobacco Research Institute. And basically, after the redry factory, they set up the assistance place, They set up several assistance places at a different place, different area where the people cultivated tobacco in Taiwan. And this place also used for trading as a trading place. So which means that tobacco farmers will transport their leaves to this place and make a kind of trade with the Monopoly Bureau. And at the bottom is the tobacco farmers. Next, please. So tobacco industry in Taiwan declined since the 1970s. So gradually declined, left behind many different kinds of tobacco heritage, factory burns, also landscape, yeah, and some like the memory, these kind of things now become kind of heritage. The photo at the right hand side is a tobacco farm. During that time, people still doing tobacco cultivation. This photo was took in eastern Taiwan in the Fengling town. And the photo at the left-hand side is abandoned tobacco burns, so which was used for curing tobacco leaves in the past. But nowadays they don't use it anymore, so it's just abandoned. Next, please. So next session, we are going to move on to looking at different case studies of tobacco industry heritage in Taiwan. Next, please. The first one will be the Songshan Tobacco Factory. This one nowadays we call it Songshan Cultural and Creative Park. This factory is a final product factory, so it means the cigarette factory. Okay, it's not a re-dry tobacco leaves re-dry factory. It's a cigarette factory. It was built in 1939. It's a very first modernized tobacco factory in Taiwan, and we would say this one is designed as an industrial village. What we mean as an industrial village is that means that it is not only a kind of factory, but it is also kind of a living place, because different buildings inside have different kind of function. Who offer different kind of services that the workers they need in the whole day. So for example, well, we will have a bathroom inside, we have nursery, canteens, medical center, and even in this case, we have a European garden, very big one. It's a very popular one. So nowadays, if we go to this place, everyone will join a short time to walk around in this European garden. So at that period, it's a very special case that a factory that design have a very different kind of functions all inside, and even a garden, so which means that workers can have a bit leisure time to walking around, which believe is could be improve the working efficiency. However, following the industry decline in Taiwan in 1998, the factory was ended for the cigarette production and soon designated as a heritage in 2001. After the conservation work, it reopened to the public as a cultural and creative park in 2011. So since 2011 to nowadays is 2022, so it's just around 10 years. Yes. Next, please. When it becomes to the cultural and creative park, basically is run by the Taipei Cultural Foundation, and the mission for them to manage this place is to make this place become a kind of creative hub of Taipei. So that means a place that for cultural, creative networking, for art communication, and public gathering. And nowadays it's a very popular because they have different kind of art exhibition in this place. And also the young generation, they can set up their small shop inside, can selling their design work or different kind of technique work. They can communicate face by face with the peoples to talk about the idea about creative art or creative industry, or creative culture. However, but this kind, actually, we not only have this case too, which means, the factory becomes to a kind of cultural and creative park. We actually have several cases. Just like the Songshan Tobacco Factory, in the past it was a factory, and nowadays it's become a cultural and creative park. For example, the one was very close to the university that I work for is the Huashan Cultural Park. That one in the Japanese period was a brewing factory. So it's quite similar. So as these cases that people might argue that how we make the balance between the cultural preservation and the creative industrial development. Because I think we don't have that much legacies. Of course, the factory was left and we preserve. The building, the physical things we preserve. However, if when we went this place, we cannot see any that intangible things that related to tobacco history, or kind of very clear information about the history or the cultural and the cultural significance of this place nowadays. Okay, next please. The photo at the top right, the top right, that one was the scene nowadays for the whole cultural and creative park. And the other three photos were the bathroom inside the factory in the past. The photo at the bottom right, that one was the bathroom before the conservation work. And the left-hand side, those two photos is the bathroom that after the conservation, and now it's reopened to the public. We call it not, the name is not just a library, so it becomes a kind of library. It's just opened 2020. So you can see they just redo the interior design and become a very, very comfortable library. It's quite a popular place. Every time I went there, a lot of people just inside reading or typing their work, discussing different kind of project there. However, it's a bit shame that we cannot see any historical things that related to the bathroom, because as I just mentioned that because this factory was designed as a kind of industrial village. So the bathroom is kind of very very special things compared with the traditional factory, that we don't have this kind of parts inside the factory. But this modernized factory, we have this kind of like bathroom inside. And we protect them and preserve them, and then we reopen to the public. But when the visitors go there, we cannot see any historical connection there. So like talking a bit story about the bathroom, these kind of things, we can't see anything about that. So I think it's a bit a shame that the heritage reinterpretation is quite late. Next, please. This is a kind of partnership from the factory itself. I mean, the cultural and creative park itself, and work out the walls, work out the boundary to find a partnership from the outside, which is the department that I'm now working for. So it's a kind of partnership between the university and the Taipei Cultural Foundation. What we try to do is that, as I said, because I think the heritage interpretation is quite weak in the cultural and creative park nowadays. So we try to find a way out to use different ways to improve this part of problem. What we did is that our students designed a real-world puzzle for the tobacco factory, which is mainly focuses on the history and the memory of the tobacco factory. So our students will go there to understand the historical development of the tobacco factory and also tobacco history in Taiwan. And then they found some very particular elements from the real world. So from the architecture, from the factory, from the whole park, and then design as a game. So we produce a kind of game box. So if a visitor got this game box, they can, during the time they play this game, they can understand more about the tobacco factory's history and the memory of this place. Yes, next please. And the second case is in Taichung, in the middle of Taiwan. This one is under conservation, so we cannot get inside at this moment. We hope we can get in very soon. And this one was built in 1942, was established under the extension of tobacco cultivation in Taiwan area. Taiwan area is quite an important tobacco cultivation in the past. And during that time, the factory also worked very closely with the Taiwan Tobacco Research Institute, is also in Taiwan. Yeah, they are all very important institutes that related to tobacco industry development in Taiwan. And the factory was in use until 2017 and under conservation now. Next, please. And the interesting of this case is that before the conservation work begin, they find a day to let the public can approach to this place. Because in the past, the tobacco was monopoly control. So for example, those factories that people cannot get in because it's a monopoly control, so it's all controlled by the government. So people cannot get in to know what looks like inside. But because this kind of place changed to a kind of heritage, so nowadays people can get in. And before the conservation work, this case just opened the factory to the public, so we can get in for on that day. And in these days, they also use a kind of games, puzzle games, for people to understand a particular part of the architectural style inside the factory. And the venue, the game when I played, I experienced the venue is the bathroom as well. Yeah, so this is a bathroom inside the Taichung Redrive factory, and they just put the game there so we can play the game in the bathroom in the factory. And so finally, if you complete the puzzle, you can see on the photo at the top right, that one you will understand the very specific architectural style, interior architectural style inside the factory. Next, please. Next section, we are going to see different kinds of tobacco industrial heritage in Taiwan, which is a trading space. And this one is in Taiping, also in Taichung. The trading space is the place that tobacco farmers will transport their leaves to this place and then do a trading with the Monopoly Bureau. Taiping, they conserve this trading space and redesign as open space to the public, and the whole trading space is separated into two sections. One of it is kind of display hall, which is mainly focuses on the tobacco history, talking about the industry history there about the tobacco, and the other part is a kind of display hall for commemorating a local artist there. And this case, we also have a very special place, is that if you can see the top photo, the top right, the photo is an open air garden. So the garden, like growing tobacco there for the public. If you go there to visit, then you will see the real tobacco leaves. Because nowadays, I think the most of people, they don't know what the tobacco looks like. So they try to cultivate a real plant there, and people can understand how tall it could be, these kind of things. Next, please. And the other things that this place is doing very well is that I think for these 10 or 20 years, when we're talking about tobacco heritage in Taiwan, sometimes we will come from this kind of different arguments, especially focused on the anti-smoking, raising by anti-smoking group. Because people might argue that why we should talking about tobacco as a contemporary society. We don't want people to smoking because we know smoking is harmful. So why you should talk about tobacco, which might imply that people to encourage to approach tobacco. Yes, it's kind of a controversy that some people might argue. But actually, this is two different stories. The one story is that we try to keep the memory, keep the history or story of the tobacco industry in Taiwan, because in the past, it's a very important agriculture of Taiwan. We call tobacco kind of cash crop. And a lot of people just rely on the tobacco cultivation. It's also a very big income for our government. And the other story is that we know smoking is harmful, so we should not encourage people to smoking. Yeah, but this is two different stories. It should not be mixed. But sometimes this kind of controversy just came out. A lot of people might argue. So nowadays, as we want to do a heritage interpretation nowadays, especially in terms of the tobacco, for example, type in trading space do a very clear declaration that's saying that we are not going to encourage people to approach tobacco or to smoking. But what we are doing is that we try to evoke the people or make the people to understand in the past what kind of tobacco industry we have. And that's why nowadays we have this kind of tobacco heritage in the contemporary society. Okay, next, please. And next part, we'll move on to the tobacco burns. These plates are used for curing tobacco leaves. So after tobacco leaves harvest from the landscape, they need to be cured. After cured, they can transport to the trading space to do the trading with the Monopoly Bureau. And these places mainly are private. So this is a very big difference from the factory or trading space. Because the factory and the trading space mainly are all public, made by the state, but the tobacco burns are all private. And we have a very traditional style, which you can see the photo at the bottom right. This one is we call Asaka Style, so it's a Japanese style because the yellow type tobacco was beginning the cultivation by the Japanese people. So everything is learned from the Japan. So the design of the curing space, the tobacco burns is also a Japanese style. And this traditional style, if people want to do in a tradition, do the curing tobacco leaves by a traditional way, is very intense of the human power. So in the 1970s, we import the new style, which is using a machine. So you can see the photo at the left bottom. That one is a curing machine. Yeah. And the photo at the top right is the people in the past that work inside the burns, the traditional Japanese style tobacco burns. So because the burns might high around 2 or 3 flowers, it's quite high. So the old photo. Okay. And next, please. And because they are private, so always facing a very a lot of difficulty when we are going to, when people would like to, or the people means that the local people, the local authority, or even the national authority, they want to preserve or conserve this kind of place because they are private. So a lot of issues need to dealing with the owner or the local people. So some place, they just try to do some kind of public-private partnership to regenerate these tobacco burns. For example, you can see the photo at the right-hand side. The middle, that one is conserved by the public funding, by the local authorities, and managed by the owner. So the deal is that we preserve the tobacco burns by the public funding, and the things that the owner needs to do is that after the conservation work, you need to manage by yourself, and for 6 years, and you need to open to a public anytime in these 60 years, which means that when the visitors go, you need to open the door for them to get inside to look around to understand, and you will be a kind of guide to show the stories, to show the functions of the tobacco burns for those visitors. Yeah, so it's a kind of cooperation between the authorities, local authorities, and the owner. Yeah. But I think most of them just abandoned. So you can see as a photo at the left-hand side, that one was the only one left in Yilan nowadays in Sanxing County. Next, please. Yeah, because these kind of burns are all private, so face different kind of difficulties when people want to preserve it. So some people just protect by themselves, but because conserve or preserve tobacco burns might spend a lot of money. They don't have that much money, so they will do different kind of. They will make find a different ways out to try to protect their own tobacco burns, because it's a very important kind of industrial partner for the farmers. Yeah, because they spend a lot of time working with the tobacco burns. So the photo at the left-hand side is that people just using the metal skin to protect the tobacco burns, very easy way and much cheaper way as you do a formal conservation work. But the photo at the right-hand side, this one is another case in eastern Taiwan as well. This one was being conserved by local people and then transits into a kind of bed and breakfast. This one is a very good case that they do the preservation by themselves. It's a very well protected. And even inside the stove or very detailed things inside of the tobacco burns are all clearly preserved. So if we get inside, we can see the things that are very traditional, very original inside the tobacco burns. And some people change their tobacco burns to a kind of storage because they are not curing tobacco leaves anymore nowadays. Yeah, or some people might just do some kind of construction work and change it to a kind of living place. So they just live inside the tobacco burns. Okay, next please. All right, so this one is the last one. I think the tobacco industrial heritage is kind of story from the industrial facility to the industrial heritage. And the tobacco itself is kind of from the cash crop to the agricultural heritage as well. So the story is about how this space or even this crop are produced in the past and the ways they are represented in the present. So it's a kind of course over the timeline, but we still need to think about how we connect the past and represent it in the present. And further, we also need to explore how the spatial meaning is transit when those tobacco-related spaces are heritage-ized. And the photo at the final slide is the tobacco flowers nowadays. I think some farmers still do tobacco cultivation, but it's just for kind of commemorate the history of the industry that they evolved itself for like 70 years for a long time. And nowadays they don't do this kind of industrial things, but they still growing tobacco as kind of commemoration. And also in the past, we won't see the tobacco flowers because if we make them flowering, that means that the leaves won't be, the quality of the leaves will be not good. So we are not allowed, we won't allow the tobacco to flowering. Yeah, but actually the flowers is quite beautiful. So nowadays, some farmers still cultivate as kind of to keep the memory of the history. Okay, the next one, just the end. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for Professor Chang Hansho's very comprehensive and insightful presentation. And I think there are many sharing aspects that perhaps we can have more dialogue between two presenters. And also, I think both presentations are really very inspiring for our audience, because now we collect actually many questions from the audience. And although we have time constraint, we need to select some of them. So please receive my apologies first if we are not able to finish all the questions. First of all, I would like to ask one question actually from myself, because from both two speakers, we all think kind of public and private partnership in both renovation and the transformation cases. Like in the case of Athens, we see Leon as an art foundation founded by an entrepreneur, and the cooperation between parliament and the foundation. And in the cases in Taiwan, we also see the government and also perhaps the foundation entrepreneur or of the local community and so on. So I was very curious about how was your observation on those cases, especially on the public and private partnership. And what do you think about the major challenges in the process, or maybe more promising aspects in the process? So the question is addressed to both speakers. Yeah, thank you.
I start first.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, I believe that public-private partnerships, they have a huge future. As far as the arts is concerned, I don't know about heritage, but as far as the arts and culture, of course, concerned, they've got a huge future in front of them. I mean, judging from the art foundation, Neon, that we saw earlier on in my case, and they also invested a lot of money into this venture. And the exhibition was free to the public, you know, and there was no fees, no tickets, no nothing. And then the project was handed over to the parliament for use as a cultural hub, of course, as well as the parliament's library, which was already there within the building. Yeah, we can see a lot of projects like this going around in, as far as Europe is concerned, that I know, plenty of projects like this, you know, private and also public partnerships. Some of them, yes, they involve investments. Some of them, it's just a partnership or a cultural purpose. I mean, that's all I know for this kind of collaborations.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Hansho.
Yes, okay. But I think it's quite similar as Curtis mentioned. I think nowadays we have more and more opportunity or more case that we try to different parts of organization or groups of people try to do kind of partnership, go over to different kinds of groups of people, like the private and the public, or the factory itself, and or to the, like for as the case that I mentioned in the university, different kind of cooperation just happened. But the question or the problem is that, for example, funding is a problem, and also the different. I think when different groups of people come together and try to do kind of cooperation, different groups all has their own imagination of the final result of the cooperation. So how to communicate or negotiate with the different groups of people who just are engaged into this partnership program is also a very important issue for us to find the kind of to find a way that we are on the same side, and we hope that we can go to the final step, and the final step looks like the same. Yeah, so I think it's a different kinds of problems that will happen into this kind of partnerships. Thank you.
Also, may I say something else? I just crossed my mind now. I mean, in France, culture and arts, it was a state monopoly for decades. But maybe less than 10 years ago, they have changed the policy. And now obviously the smaller museums in France, for example, they accept donations and funding from, patrons or art foundations. And also art foundations in France has become prominent in the past, let's say, 10, 15 years. And that is in France, yeah, which is one of the most important countries in the world as far as culture is concerned. So, well, there you have it.
Yeah, I think as the colleagues mentioned, the monopoly. I think the monopoly also plays a kind of role since in the past and now nowadays. Even though in Taiwan the monopoly has been ended, is already cancelled, but actually their influence is still they still have the influence into nowadays when we are trying to do kind of heritage preservation nowadays, and especially during the partnership. Sometimes they also kind of actors inside, but the communication might come across a kind of very big issues in terms of to talk to the monopoly sectors. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think within different regional or political context, we all have maybe sometimes sharing challenges and sometimes unique problems to deal with. But I think mostly we are promising. Two speakers feel that partnership will be promising, and actually it needs to work for a longer time to see whether the direction or anything need to adjust. Okay, and now we have many questions. First of all, I think this question is addressed to Kotis. This audience, thank you for your question. He or she mentioned about, in your case, the tobacco factory was transformed into art exhibition place. So what was the most difficult thing during the process of the transformation? And,
the most difficult thing in...
Yes.
Well, I think that as the video showed, half of the building was restored for the exhibition purposes. The other half of the building, it was already the Parliament's library and also the printing office for the government newspaper, the government gazette, as they call it. So in reality, what was refurbished was the big spaces that it was the atrium, the dome on top of the atrium, and some of the corridors. And that was the investment from the Neonate Foundation, which was approximately 2 million euros. I don't know if I answer your question, but that's as far as I know. You know, I don't really know the mechanics of what happened behind, closed doors. But this is what they have released, both the Hellenic Parliament and the Neonate Foundation. So this limits my knowledge of the subject, really. I don't know if I answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. I think the other question was addressed to Hansho 老师. This audience is curious about whether Professor Chang has done some research on the memories or the living habitat, I mean the village or their living environment of the laborers, the former tobacco laborers. Yeah, I think the answer is for sure, yeah, but I think could you share with us some of your studies on this aspect?
Okay, yes, I actually I collected oral history, yeah, from different parts of people who involved into tobacco industry. So basically tobacco farmers and also the workers or officials who work in the tobacco factory. Yeah, so I did some research and some collect the life history and the memory and also some historical archives. Yeah, I think actually because recently we, for example, in Taichung, in Pingdong, in Jiayi, we all have some different kind of groups who working on this part of historical material collection. Yeah, but it's I think nowadays, for example, as we now have a kind of ANIH as a kind of networking, but for the tobacco research, we know that we have different groups who working on a different case study and for the different purposes. Yeah, but actually we don't have a kind of networking to connect with different groups of people who just work on the tobacco history, whatever it is about tobacco factory or tobacco farmers or trading space, this kind of thing. Or some people might only focusing on the intangible thing, for example, the religious event, which is related to the tobacco industry as well. Yeah, so I think this is an issue. I hope in the future, probably we can have a kind of networking, then we can now understand different parts tobacco history in Taiwan, because even though all are about tobacco industry in Taiwan, but I think in Taichung, in Pingtung, in Kaohsiung, in Hualien, they also have a very specific part of that place who have a very particular style or particular history of the tobacco cultivation there. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Kosti. I think this question may be also concerned by some of the audience. I was wondering, since the site of the tobacco factory, currently the cultural space of the parliament, the history of that was really complicated, and I was amazed by your talk. So from
thank you.
The factory of the laborers, and then turned into a shelter during the war, and then later on it became a prison, and then in the end as an art space and also the cultural hub. So that was the transformation was amazing. So I was wondering, how was the first exhibition responded to this past? I mean, it's so complicated. I believe it must be also very inspiring. So how did the first art exhibition responded to the site? Or what was the attitude selected by the exhibition?
Well, to answer the question is that there's a dark history behind the major, transformations of the tobacco factory. I mean, the Second World War as a raid, as an air raid, is okay. Then it housed refugees, but where it says refugees during the Second World, just after the Second World War, if you see the map of the Balkans, Greece became under the influence of the Western powers, the British, the Americans, and so on. But on the natural border, which is Albania, the former Yugoslavia, and Bulgaria, they all went into on the Russian side. So the refugees, in reality, they were people coming from Romania and Bulgaria that they were of Greek origin, and they came to Greece to avoid persecution from the communist regime at the time. At the same time, in Greece, we were under civil war, very much like the same that happened in China, between the communist forces and the government forces. And the war lasted for about 4 years, and with tragic consequences, as all civil wars have. So as far as the exhibition is concerned, I don't think that neither the authorities, the Greek parliament that is, nor Neon, they wanted to address any of this because, as I said, it's a dark page in history during the civil war in Greece and also the Cold War. So I mean, I don't think that anybody wants to talk about this thing. And they try to look into the future. And currently, the current situation, which is the pandemic, and the inspiration from the Portal's essay from the Indian writer. And the exhibits, of course, they are related to Portal's and they commissioned also another 15 pieces, if I'm not mistaken, art pieces, especially for the exhibition this time. So I just have to put this back because, you know, I can hear my voice. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Kosti. I think I can feel why you call the portals as a new side of, humanities. I think actually not only a pandemic situation, but also the past with it. I think there are still a lot of, promising future to go, although sometimes challenges.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure there's still a lot of people that they are still alive and they remember all this. I mean, it's not 200 years old, but we just want to leave the past behind us. You know, look into the future.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your insight. Yeah. Okay. So we have actually 2 minutes more, although I think still some questions. And I think there is a quite interesting question mentioning that in Taiwan, actually, smoking is a kind of, harmful thing promoted by the government, and also put images on the cigarette box. And how do people in Greece toward smoking? And how was it related to the, the preceding the site? Yeah.
In Greece, you know, I guess going back to history and the tobacco cultivation, growing, and, you know, the huge cigarette factories, we are still heavy smokers, including myself. If that answers your question. There are still major growers in Greece as well, as far as tobacco is concerned. One of them is they do a lot of exports. And, well, actually, 2 of them, they do a lot of exports. There is still tobacco growing because they don't forget that in this specific region, the quality of tobacco is superior. It's not that it's just any tobacco, it's the quality of the tobacco in this particular region, which is in areas in northern and also in southern Greece, as well as Turkey, Bulgaria, and so on. In this particular region, the quality of the tobacco leaves are superior. So there's still demand. Actually, one of my best friends is a tobacco buyer. He works for Philip Morris. He's based currently in Indonesia, but they also buy tobacco from Turkey, from Greece, from Bulgaria, and so on. Well, for us, there's no guilt in smoking. Although, of course, you know, you can't smoke inside, you know, closed areas and everything, but there's no such thing as guilt about smoking. I mean, as far as Taiwan is concerned, here, you know, you can't smoke here, you can't smoke there, you can't smoke. There's nothing wrong with that. Once you're outside in the open area, of course you can smoke. There's no problem about this. I think here in Taiwan, the whole thing is a bit exaggerated, in my humble opinion, that is.
This actually, I have the last question for Professor Chang, and related to the answer just Kosti gave.
Yeah, but
I was wondering whether the culture of smoking impact on regeneration of tobacco sites. I mean, any impacts caused by this kind of cultural context.
Okay.
Yes, I think if we still because nowadays we promote the anti-smoking, but if we go to the past when the days that people the government or just people thinking that smoking is a very normal behavior, then we talk about tobacco that much must be no problem. But nowadays, I think nowadays because we promote anti-smoking, so when we talk about tobacco, we need to pay more attention about dealing with this kind of understanding or idea or feeling with the controversy. So for example, as my slide, I always have a small sentence at the bottom say, I'm not going to encourage people to approach smoking. Yeah, but I'm going to protect the history or the memory of tobacco. So, but I think nowadays, as the awareness of protecting heritage, industrial heritage in Taiwan is increased, so the controversy, I think, is kind of smaller than before. Yeah, because a few years ago, the Liudui Cultural Park, they hold some activities for the children to experience harvest tobacco leaves there, but has been got a very serious argument and feedback from the children, from the Dongshi Foundation, and for some parents saying why you should like the children to connect to the tobacco. Yeah, a few years ago, yeah, just these kind of things happen. Yeah, but I think this year, I think as we have a lot of heritage industrial heritage, tobacco industrial heritage has been protected, and people might thinking the issue will go to the other way is to connect to the area regeneration, these kind of things. For example, the Pingdong tobacco factory is a very keen case. Probably will be reopened very soon this year. Yeah, so it's a kind of different issue. So in a few years ago, a lot of people might pay more attention on the controversy, but nowadays probably more attention will focus on the ways how we reuse or we change this kind of industrial heritage to a kind of regeneration area or regeneration the tourism, this kind of perspective. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and thanks to our two speakers and also to our audience. I'm sorry the time is over, I think 5 minutes more. So
it's okay.
I need actually to close the event, but I believe that during our conversation, actually we will, in the future, I think we really look forward to more dialogue, communication, discussion, and thank you very much for the insights our two speakers brought to us. And I think this online seminar is really a special event, especially under this pandemic situation. So I believe today's dialogue would be a portal using the word Agrafiotis, yeah, for new insights, communication, and perhaps cooperation in the field of industrial heritage. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, and thank you for everybody's participation.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we leave our meeting room, could we take a group photo together? Okay, let me count. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Cheese. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
thank
having
you.
us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.